Hello, this is Praveen. Welcome to .NETgurukul.com for the ASP.NET Core Web API Beginners to Advanced Training. Today we are in Module 1, Foundations of REST and Web API. So Session 7. So Session 7 is all about model binding, DTOs and model validation. So here are the agenda items. First, I'm going to introduce with what is model binding, okay, and what are the different types like in this routings, like in this model bindings, okay. So like in from route, from body, from query, and from header. I'm going to discuss that in detail, okay. And also like we will also see what is the importance of having the data transfer objects, okay, nothing but the DTOs, okay. And then finally with the model validation, okay. So let's get started. Model binding in ASP.NET Core. So model binding is like converting your HTTP request to the method parameters, action method parameters. Okay, so like in your you have this input request, right? Like from the HTTP request, and that particular data has to be mapped with the method parameters, like method parameters or method signatures. So now that you have this particular HTTP request, and that particular HTTP request can be data can be come from any of these sources. Okay, so that whether it could be from the route, it be from the body, it could be from the string or from the header. Okay, so it has to be mapped with your methods parameters. Okay, so you might be having some action methods, right, like in the method signature, that has to be mapped with respect to your method signature. So that I call this as the model binding. Okay, so understand this is the binding types, like in you have this from route. Okay, so API slash here is my route, like in the from route parameter. Okay, this with 10 will be mapped with your action method parameter. Okay, this is already like you have seen, right? Like by routing is by from route is like by default. Okay, so it doesn't need to mention, but it is if you can mention from route for get APIs, if you can mention from route, that will be much better way of readability. Okay, so similarly for post methods, like you have seen, like without using from body also, like you can post the data, right, like in the previous session. So now that we'll add this explicitly, like in this from route, from body, from query, and from header. So we will add explicitly and we'll do the demo. Okay, so I hope you understand what is basically like what is like model binding. So we are mapping with the HTTP request data to the action methods. Okay, so let me connect to my tab and explain you that in detail. Okay, got connected. So let's get understand model binding, DTOs, and model validation. Okay, so what is model binding? Like in your HTTP request, like in the HTTP request, they will have multiple sources. So you have this HTTP request. Okay, so HTTP request can be from multiple sources. Like it could be from route, it could be from body, it could be from header. Okay, it could be from query string. Okay, so in this particular thing, like you understand, like in this thing, like that HTTP request can be from multiple sources, like in from route or from body, from header, and this from query. So this particular thing, like it has to be mapped with your method signature in your controller. Like I have this controller, okay, in this iAction method. So let's say M1, and it has some parameters 1, parameter 2. Okay, so paramem, I need to map that with my method signature in my action controller. Okay, so that's I call this as the model binding. I hope you understand what we are writing this thing. So we also previously done with this kind of a demo, right, like in this thing. So if I in this previous session 6, like in this thing on a HTTP head, like in this, let me go to the HTTP gate. Okay, so in instant, like we didn't mention this is from route, like in this thing. So, but it mapped with defaultly. Now that we'll do explicitly. Okay, we'll add that from route here explicitly. So now that it is mapped with your method signature, right? Like in this thing. So similarly, that HTTP request, like in wherever it might come, like in this particular from body or from header or from query, I just wanted to map with the method parameters. Okay, so that I call with the model binding. So now let's understand what are the DTOs, like what is the importance of DTOs. DTOs are nothing but the data transfer objects. Okay, So in this particular, I have this database, like see here, I have this database. Okay, I have this entity framework model. Okay, and this entity framework model is like in this entity framework model is into this controller, right? Controller action method, which is not at all a secured way. Like in this particular, here is an issue here. So this is not secure. So here in most of the things, like you're exposing your entity framework model directly to the end users in the controller. So that whenever the particular method, like in the posting or in this thing, like the end user can understand your database structure. Okay. So if you are exposing your entity model directly to the controller, your entity, like in your database tables or all the stuff that can be easily tampered by end users easily, right? Like in for a consider there is a users table. Okay, so there is a users table which has the username and the password, and you have this thing entity model has to define with a database table, right? And the particular data and the particular entity framework model has to be exposed to your controller, which is not at all secured way. Okay, so that's the main disadvantage directly using the entity framework model in your controller. So we use for a tailored class, like in the secured classes or a tailored classes, which will communicate to your controller. Okay, so something like this. See here, I have this database. Okay, I have this entity framework model. Okay, and I have this DTO, and I have this controller. So instead of directly exposing the entity framework model into the controller, I have this particular intermediate or tailored class for that will act as a shadow, like that will shadow with entity framework model, and that will be a secured way. So this is the tailored class or customized class for controller methods for security. So if there are any fields like in this particular username and the passwords that will be not be exposed to the end users, okay, who are the consumers will not be exposed. Okay, so once you go through the demo, you'll get to understand much in detail. For now, you understand like in this model binding. So your HTTP request can come from anywhere. Okay, so from the route it would become from body, from header, or from query string. So we just need to map that with the method signature. Like in the controller, you have this action methods, like I'm just mapping that particular action method parameters. Okay, so I call them as the model binding. And in why we use the importance of DTOs, like in the DTOs, like I have this particular entity framework model, okay, which is directly being exposed to your controller classes, okay, which is not at all secured. Okay, so I'll show you a demo. We'll get to know much in detail. Okay, so now that like there is an intermediate class or a customized class or a tailored class, which is with this intermediate way of overshadowing the entity framework model. So I will use the DTO. Okay, so let's get started with respect to demo. Okay, let me connect to my tab. Yeah, my VS Studio is on. So let me close everything. Yeah. See here, this is what we have done in the previous session, like in this thing. So if you can see here for the post method, the employee model is being exposed to the end user, whoever this particular request are making, like they understand your model. Like they once they understand the model, it is like relevant. Like that model is like the replica of your database table, right? So that's not is secure. This is not secure, right? Like let we introduce in this session, we'll introduce within the DTOs. Okay, so here is my module 1 session 7. Okay, I have this model over here, orders, like in this orders. So I have this integer ID. Okay, so which is nothing but the order ID, product name, quantity, and price. So consider I have this some secured field in the on the order, like it has some, let's say it has some created date, like in this created date or anything like in the order ID or any sensitive data. I wanted to protect this field. Okay, so for like in I can mention this as the like in this thing in the DTO objects, and I just wanted to avoid this field in the DTO. Okay, so what I have done is like for the DTO, if you can see, I have this created order. So create order DTO. So first of all, the table name is not being exposed. Okay, the second thing is like the the required field that only the required fields only exposed, like in the product name I wanted to expose, the quantity and the price. Okay, so I mentioned this particular three items only. I'm not exposing the ID or the creator date, okay, to the end users. Only the required one, like whichever the fields that I wanted to expose to the end user, I am just exposing that fields only. Okay, so for that I'm using this particular created DTO. Okay, so and I mentioned this particular required field validator range, okay, which is the model validation. Okay, and like see how I have the order response. So in this order response, I'm just returning this order ID. Okay, so for that person only, that order ID will be visible. Okay, so all this your orders, this like in this entity order entity is being, the fields are being not exposed directly. Okay, so this is the customized tailor classes, right? So with the response, whichever the response I wanted to return, I will return. Okay, I hope you understand with this DTOs. Okay, so here is my controller. So in this controller, like in this thing, like I have used the API controller, which enables the automatic model validation, and this is with your normal routing API slash controller, which is nothing but API slash orders. Okay, I have this static list of elements instead of database. Okay, so let's do with the list, and later in the phase two we'll add the databases also. Okay, so now in this thing I have this particular get orders API, like in this API I have from order, from route. Okay, so this has to be explicitly defined with from route. Okay, so let understand this thing, like in HTTP get, like I will filter with the order IDs. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, I'm just filtering with respect to the order ID, and I'm just giving the response. Okay, so save everything. So I just wanted to give the response back to this request. Okay, so okay. So I'm just returning the response code and the response. Okay, on the JSON response. Okay, I just wanted to put a breakpoint over here. So let's develop for the same. Similarly, we develop with the from route. Okay, so this thing it is coming from route. Okay, so it's not mandatory like each and every request will be from route. Like, so there will be other sources also that could be from query string, right? Like let's say it's from query string, from query. Okay, so I'll just take this as get order from query. So nothing, no difference over here. Okay, so no difference over here. Just I just instead of taking from route, I'm taking from query. Okay, so I'll use here as search. I'm searching the orders over here. So for the order here, the search order IDs parameter I'm getting from the route. From here, I'm getting from the query. Okay, so simple, like I'm just returning here. Okay, so let's test this particular to both the APIs, and later we'll come to create order. Okay, so it's taking some time. So now that we have these designed two APIs which search the orders. Okay, so in this I have two orders, like see I want one and two. Okay, I'm going to have this HTTP route request and the HTTP query string request. Okay, both the request I am just doing the same thing, just finding that particular route ID, right? Finding that request type, and I'm just returning that particular response. Okay, so it is everything running here. See here, it is running under 7192. Okay, let me open my Postman. 7192 API routes. So here is my API slash routes. So API slash routes. So I just need to pass the integer also. Okay, so specify this as slash one. Okay, so send the request. It's taking some time. Yeah, so the breakpoint came and hit over here, and it will filter with this laptop. Okay, this price and this particular order ID, and it will return that particular response. Okay, with status. Okay, status. Okay, which is 200. See, I got the status and I just got the response also. Okay, I hope you understand. Like, how do I map this request? Okay, to the method signature through from route. Okay, you even if you don't mention from route, it is also by default, but you have to explicitly mention for better maintenance, better readability of your API. Okay, during your development process. See here, I wanted to send this order ID through the from query. So what I will do is like I'm just going to this params here. I have this keys over here. So I just mentioned this as the order slash. So this is my search, right? So this is my search get API. So search slash. So mention this keys ID and just mention this as well. So what happens is like if we, for the get APIs, the URL string got changed. See here. So when I added the params over here, the URL string got changed. So now that it will fight with the search API and we will pass the ID. Like we already mentioned this in this particular in the API. I already mentioned it is from the query. Okay. So that particular parameter is already mapped. See here, all I got the one. Okay. So if you run, you will get the same response. Okay. So if you can make it 2. So I made it to here. Okay. So I just run this. You will get the next response. Okay. Which is nothing but like with your keyboard. Okay. So I got my keyboard. Okay. I got the response with the price and quantity. Okay. So I hope you understand like how do I pass the input request like with from route and from query strings. Okay. So now let's see like from body, like in the from body, I just wanted to post this. I wanted to create a new order. Okay. So let's do that. Okay. So this like I just wanted to add certain elements to this list elements. Okay. So let's do that. Okay. I'm just I'm just adding a new like incrementing the counter for the orders. Okay, and the product and just the quantity price. I'm just adding that to the list. Okay, so what I did is like I just taken the new order. Okay, so new order like I created instance to the order and just incremented certain value. Okay, to the order ID and I'm just giving the from the DTO whichever the thing that I'm just mapping with the new order. Okay. So now just I just need to give the response, right? So I just wanted to copy this and paste it here. Okay, so here is my new order. Instead of order, paste this one. Okay, so it will read this new request. Okay, new request to insert the new order, and will return the particular response. Okay, I hope you understand like what we have done in this API. So here I'm just creating the order. Okay, so from body, like if I'm taking this particular request DTO, instead of directly exposing my entity framework model, I'm taking the DTO. See here, here is it not secured? Definitely, right? So we are securing this entity model, and whichever the field that is required, I'm just mentioning in the create order. Okay, I already discussed this one, right? So just to put a breakpoint here, let's run this. Okay, so for this time I just wanted to post certain, I wanted to order like with the, let's say, desktop. Okay, so order. So this endpoint is straightforward. I do not have this particular HTTP post. Okay, so this is HTTP post. So I selected HTTP post. So this is API slash controller. So API slash controller, and just I'm just passing the in the body. So here in the body. So let me copy here this one. In the body, I just wanted to mention raw and JSON. I'm just passing this JSON. So I don't need ID here. The new request, like what is wanted, like created order, like in this product name, quantity, price. So I'm just passing the product name, quantity and price, like say here desktop quantity 3. So here 1,000. So if I send this request, this post method will be get hit, right? Like if you can see here, orders controller. So I have this thing and I have mapped from body. So from body is like from body, it is taking from body and the raw selection and the JSON. This JSON data will be mapped with your orders DTO. okay, object, which is from the from body, right? So that's the thing. Okay, so send it. So I got mapped. So I got with the method signature, I got this price, product name, and quantity. Okay, I'm just incrementing that order ID here, and I'm just returning the response. Okay, with the new values. Okay, so new request. See here, I got the response here. So are we exposing that entity framework model, which with my orders, like I have this field like in the created date or some secured field, that is we are not exposing, right? So if you just return with the new order, okay, what happens, like which the order, like which is the order is like with your entity framework order, right? Like in this particular entity framework model, right? So if I return this particular, instead of response, I return this particular new order. So will my data be secured? So no, definitely not. So I will be able to see this thing created date also. So what I did is like I replace the response to new order and restart this and see the response will change here. All your data will be exposed. Okay. So if I change and just send this request, see, I got my secured field was also being exposed here. Okay, so which is a constant here. So I just need to return this order response object, right? So DTO object response. So I'm just returning that DTO object. Okay, and just restart. Now go make the request, and you will not see this created date. See, in many of the applications, many of these real-time world applications, like you have to analyze like in the HTTP request, and you have to analyze your entity framework model, and you'll see lot of DTO objects. Okay, so you have to work with the DTO objects rather than the entity models. Okay, so I hope you understand with the demo. Like in the coming sessions, like we'll do more examples when we are working with the phase two with the repository layer, service layer. You'll have these particular database entity objects, and you'll have the mappers and all this stuff. Okay, so when it comes to the repository layer, you will come across more about this. I'll talk about more about this on this in detail. Okay, so I hope you understand like with this session, like in model binding in ASP.NET Core, like it has the different types of sources, right? In we are mapping the particular different sources. We are mapping with the method signature. Okay, sorry, I forgot the header one. Okay, this is very straightforward. Let me finish it off quickly. Okay, I have this thing, another method over here, if you can see, from header. Okay, so it has this from header, and it has the header name. Okay, so which is the key name. Okay, so I'm just sending that particular key name with my client version, and I'm displaying that thing. So with the OK response, I'm just giving this client server version. Okay, let me show you that one as well. Okay, so I have this thing like in this header. I need to send the body. I'm not sending anything right now. Okay, on the header, I have this key, something like X version. Let's consider I have this X version key parameter over here in the header. Okay, so the value is like, let's say client, let's say some like client version, let it be 1.2. Okay, so this is my 1.2 version something. Okay, so I just need to receive that in the header. Okay, so from header I just need to mention this is my endpoint over here, order slash endpoint. Okay, put the breakpoint here, and this is HTTP GET. Okay, select this as the HTTP GET. Okay, I hope you understand. Like in terms of this request, I have this HTTP GET, right? HTTP GET, and the endpoint is from header. So I mentioned this as the from header. And this thing like method signature have from header. So from header, which is I need to read the X client version. Okay, so X client version key, which is 1.1, 1.2, which has to be read from this, but read in this method signature. Okay, so let's do that. See here, I got 1.2 here. So I'm just displaying that version. Okay, response. Okay. The client version received 1.2. I hope you understand like in this, but complete like in having this source types and how do I map it from method signature action methods. Okay. And like what is the importance of having the DTO transfer objects. Okay, so while going to the repositories, like in phase 2, like in module 2, repositories like in services, like in the having repository layer, service layer, DTOs, and I will demo more on this. Okay, model validation, and you'll also have mappers. Okay, so for now that you have to understand, like when it is not a good practices to expose your entity model directly in the controller, like we'll use the DTO. DTO is nothing but the tailor class, a customized class, which overshadows your entity framework. Okay. So that's it. Okay. So that's it for this session. Let's catch up with respect to the next session, like in HTTP codes. Okay. So like in 200, 201, 400 and all this stuff, we'll discuss much in details with respect to the HTTP status codes. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for watching.